But that would be,
I was thinking for, oh, go ahead, Ken.
just real quick, Eric, just let me know what that, your other team member's name and ID are so that I can recognize them in the waiting room. Is it Chris?
It'll be Chris Alexander, yes.
Okay, that one just popped in, so that's easy. Okay.
And then,
Awesome, thank you.
I guess to make it more simple for comments, I was thinking, let's just do alphabetical order, starting with Carcone and Chuck, Conflitti, Hoffman, Pennington, and then on down the line. Does that sound good?
A great idea, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Who's that, Mr. Chuck? How come I'm not seeing
Yes,
you?
indeed. I've got my coffee
Mike?
here.
Mike, this is Lisa
There he
Anderson.
is.
I
Lisa,
don't
Go
have
ahead.
a separate attorney report for the items on the agenda tonight, so you don't need to call on me after Leslie unless you want to, or unless
Okay.
there's questions.
all right. Okay, 10-4.
So, Mr. Confletti, all the, looks like all the participants have been allowed into the meeting now. We are also streaming live on YouTube. Again, when
All
we get to a point of open public comment, the feature is *9 on their phone to raise their hand, and I will selectively unmute the people that have their hand raised and allow them to speak.
Okay. All right,
The
good. Thanks,
meeting is
Ken.
yours.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the Lyon Township Planning Commission meeting for Monday, May 11th, 2020. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
and one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Kelly, if you take roll call, please.
Sure. Patricia Carcone,
Here.
Jim Chuck,
Here.
Michael Conflitti,
Here.
Stefan Hoffman,
Here.
Ron Pennington,
Here.
Kurt Radke,
Here.
Carl Town.
Carl. Did we hear from
You wa-
Carl?
He was on.
Yeah, he was here earlier.
He'll probably be back then.
All right. Okay, we'll continue. Approval of tonight's agenda. Brian, any changes? Brian's
No
on mute.
changes
There he
this
is.
evening. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, can we have a motion?
There's no changes. I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Support.
Okay, Mr. Chuck, we have motion and support. For these, we'll just do approval. So we have a motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mike, can
Yes,
we have
yes.
a roll call for
Even on
all
these?
votes?
Okay,
Even on those,
understand.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you.
all
Okay,
right.
sure.
Kelly, you're up.
Right, yep. Patricia Carcone,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yep.
Ron Pennington,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
and Carl, if he's on there. I don't see him though. Great.
He looks like he was out. I'm admitting him now. He just logged back in. He's in the
Okay.
waiting room.
Okay.
He's connecting now.
We'll give him a minute.
Come back in.
All right, you're the man. All
Yeah,
right,
I lost my
approval.
connection. I lost my connection.
Carl, are you good with the approval of the agenda?
Yep,
Okay,
approved.
thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Approval consent agenda, March 11th, 2020. Could I have a motion on that,
If
please?
there's no correction, I make a motion to approve.
Support.
Kurt Radke supports.
Motion and support. Kelly?
Patricia Carcone,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Ron Pennington,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Carl Tom.
Yes.
All right, very good. At this point, we're going to have comments from the public on non-agenda items. Anything that's not on the agenda.
So again, the request for the public is press star 9 on your phone, and we will see that your hand is raised, and we will unmute your line. So anybody that has called in on the traditional phone, on the traditional keypad, star 9 will give us a virtual hand raise, and we'll unmute you.
All right. No one, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll move on. Is Tina speaking tonight? Does anyone know? Is Christina
think
speaking? No,
I don't
no.
think she is.
Okay. All right. Brian, if you'd start us off with public hearing AP 1951 Lion Crossing PD amendment. That's the Watermark residential.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll allow me, I will share my screen here, just so anybody watching, or if I have to point out any specific elements of the plan. You have our report dated April 14th, 2020, and I'll note that the review is based on the plans that are dated March 13th, 2020. Last week, the applicants were able to address the comments and concerns of consultants and subsequently submitted an updated plan set dated May 6th. And after that submittal, it just so happened that the consultants, Leslie and I, were able to have a meeting with the traffic engineers of both applicants, Watermark and Zott, during which time we discussed some necessary modifications to the plans. So we received an updated plan at the end of the week last week, which Leslie sent out to the Planning Commission today, in which the southern entrance of the Watermark development was moved. If you can follow my screen here, this is the original plan that you would have had paper copies of, where the southern entrance sits just over 100 feet from the roundabout. Sorry, just over 200 feet from the roundabout. But one of the major concerns of the traffic review was that this driveway was too close to the roundabout. And so Garrett's team has put together an updated plan to show how that modification would look in plan format. So we have one sheet out of the plan set showing an updated boulevard driveway farther north. The second apartment building is moved to the south. The driveway now comes up. The clubhouse is located here at the north end of this island in the middle. And this building, this residential building, which was on previous plans running east-west, is now located north-south. So the changes that were made do not impact the density or any of the open space in any significant fashion from the plans that you've received and reviewed. So from that aspect, we don't find a concern with how the plan complies with the ordinance. It does address a very important outstanding concern noted in the traffic study. And I know Leslie is going to go over some more specific details of the traffic study moving forward. I'll just note a few of the big changes that were addressed by Garrett's team, by Watermark, since the last review. So all of the buildings, there are now 19 buildings on the site. There are 304 units, so that's 16 units per building. All of these buildings are 2-story. There are no more 3-story buildings. The total project density is down to 15.5 units per acre. If you recall, at concept review, that number was 17, and it was received in mixed regard by both the Planning Commission and the Township Board. Several members of each body felt that that density was too high, whereas several felt it was appropriate. So regardless of those comments, the density now is 15.5. There's 708 parking spaces on the May 6th plan. On the new alignment here, to address the traffic concerns, that number is 714. That number complies with the ordinance. It includes the detached garages. It includes garage space underneath each one of the structures, not underneath, at ground level, but below the 2nd-story apartments, as well as what we'll call tandem garage spaces. These are essentially the driveway space for each one of the garage units. At the Planning Commission, there were comments relating specifically to the landscape buffer and the distance of buildings close to that western property line. Several of the structures have been moved farther away. You'll note that the residential structures along here are now a bit farther. I'll talk about specific dimensions later. There are low detached garages here. And referencing the landscape plan, there's quite a significant landscape buffer along that western property line now as proposed on the landscape plan. So we think that the applicant has done a good job of addressing those needs and concerns of separating these new apartment structures from the existing single-family homes. And I will note that I think they've done a good job. The landscape architect has done a good job addressing some of the questions or comments from residents in Golden Valley. For instance, you'll note that there's a gap in the landscape here near Building P. This is Building P here. But this gap was requested by that property owner who wanted to retain all of the sunset views that he currently has. And so that's just one piece of illustration that they've listened to some of the concerns at the public hearing.
Brian, you mean sunrise?
Sunrise. Did I say sunset?
Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
for the clarification.
We know what you meant.
Okay. The use of public services was described during the concept review, and that really hasn't changed. And I know Leslie has specific comments on the ability to service the development with water and sewer and things like that. One of the pieces that I thought was unique that was pointed out in the traffic study was that ultimately this development was planned for commercial uses. Not only this specific site, but the Zott site as well. And on page 7 of the traffic report, it indicates that as a commercial use, this site specifically would generate nearly 9,600 trips per day. So 9,600 trips per day based on 200,000 square feet of shopping center space. The residential use is anticipated to generate 7,375 vehicles less than that. So we're in the 2,200 vehicle per day traffic volumes. As required for a preliminary review, the applicants have also submitted an economic impact assessment. And this shows that they anticipate over $3 million in one-time permit and utility connection fees. They have done an analysis on annual property tax revenue, which is anticipated at just under $110,000 versus cost to the township of $60,000. So we are talking about a roughly $50,000 net positive for the township in terms of servicing the site. It's also broken down to describe the impact on the South Lyon Community School District, where based on 27 students living in this development, the school district would get revenues of just over $600,000 at a cost of $275,000. So a net positive there as well. Moving on to some of the other requirements, the usable open space we questioned in our initial review. The calculations had included clubhouse, the fitness center, some sidewalks, things like that. That has been corrected as of the May 6th plan. And that plan shows that there is 2.74 acres of usable open space where they'd be required to have at least 2.18 acres. So that standard is complied with. Moving on to design standards, we note that permitted uses, this is the same question that was presented to the Planning Commission and the board at concept review. And we note that the residential multifamily uses are not permitted currently. So that's what the amendment is. This is definitely a use that we would anticipate as a buffer between single family homes to the west and commercial uses to the east. All the structures comply with all of our setback requirements for multifamily homes. We have no concerns with conformity there, either for the May 6th plan or the new plan addressing the traffic concerns. All these structures are set back appropriately, so we have no concerns there. In our review, we have several items that we noted for clarification or for the applicant to address in terms of building design and architecture. Now, understanding that some of these are subjective, the applicants have already updated the plan set to address some of these comments. The first of which is earlier plans had not included any stone facade on the detached garages, which we felt was necessary to tie those garages into the material vernacular for the residential structures. So you'll note in the May 6th plan, there's a course of stone to match the apartment buildings and the clubhouse. We also note that the predominant architectural material on the exterior of the buildings, of the residential buildings themselves, was a cement lap siding, which is shown here. And in the May 6th plan, well, one of the concerns that we had or questions that we had was all of Lyon Crossing and all of Lyon Town Center was required to be predominantly stone and brick and masonry in some form or fashion. And so we want to make sure that as we are looking at the design of these structures, that we don't go from those more traditional long-lasting materials, that we go to something that is a bit different and starkly in contrast with not only those buildings, but then moving into the single family homes to the west. So the architect has updated the facade drawings. So we have two alternate facades. And we'll ask Garrett for some confirmation here, but the way that I understand this is with the additional stone material that is proposed on some of the facades in the front, This would be the design that you would see from the Grand River, from the Lion Center Drive facade. And the structures that are set back from the road that are not visible from the road would be, would have a little bit less stone on them as was originally presented. The last underlined note that I have for building design and architecture related to the clubhouse. One of the first things that jumped out at me was the leasing office has a pretty grand entrance intended to draw new residents in or prospective residents in, whereas the actual clubhouse entrance for residents is a bit smaller in nature and character. We talked through this with the architect, and I've come to agree that it's appropriate in terms of the right scale, not overshadowing the leasing center. I understand that, but that was where the original comment came from. Next item I'd like to chat about is sidewalks and bike paths. The site plan itself, the north side of Lion Center Drive already has the sidewalk running the length of the property. The new site plan shows a sidewalk that is running along the east boundary of the property here that connects all the way up to the property line that's shared with the park. I know we can get some additional information from the applicants, but one of the reasons that it's not continued on into the park to a pathway that exists is there's a service drive that is shown on the plans that Republic occasionally uses. And so there are some challenges with crossing that service drive with pedestrian traffic. So I'd like Planning Commission to comment on that and potentially work through some solutions, because ultimately we want to be able to connect this development to the park. We asked for some clarifications on the sign in terms of its setback from the right of way. And on the May 6th plan, there are notes that say it will comply with our ordinance. It will be at least 15 feet from the right of way. Obviously, the location of that sign would need to change with the updated plan here that addresses the traffic concerns, but I think that's feasible based on the dimensions that are shown. We noted that we needed to see details on the lighting fixtures for the site, and that the poles needed to be underneath 22 feet in height. Details of these structures have been, or of these fixtures have been provided in your packet, and the response letter that was sent with the application or with the updated materials notes that no poles will be higher than 22 feet, so that will comply. I chatted about landscaping a bit already. We think it's a full plan, no concerns with conformity with the ordinance. Now, with the modified plan to address the traffic concerns, some of the landscaping material would have to be moved, of course, to surround that boulevard, but we don't note anything that jumps out of this that would prevent them from complying with the ordinance. That sums up my comments. I'd note that really moving forward, the plans that would be presented to the Planning Commission and to the board in the future, and coming back to the township for a final PD amendment review, I'd anticipate that they end up looking like this traffic, the plan to address the traffic concerns. As I noted, I don't see any issues with the conformity. It doesn't change any densities. It's as we would expect for this project. So subject to any of the concerns of consultants or planning commissioners or those comments raised at the public hearing, I'd recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Township Board for this plan. With that, I can take any questions.
Thanks. Thanks, Brian. Let's wait till, any questions, if you have, the commissioners, if you have questions, wait till after Leslie. So we'll ask Brian or Leslie at the same time. If that's all right. Thanks, sir.
Leslie- oh, you're welcome. Leslie, would you like me to stop screen sharing or would you like me to leave it up and you can direct me?
Would you mind leaving it up?
Yep. Do you want the new one or the May 6th plan?
Actually, the plan that you're on right now.
Okay.
is perfect.
All right, Leslie, you're up.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to summarize. We have verified that the water mains in this area are adequately sized to support the proposed use. We also have evaluated the sanitary sewer, and there is enough capacity for the additional 263 REUs, as well as the obligated parcels per the township's sewer master plan report in the downstream gravity sewer to accommodate this proposed development. Stormwater detention was also evaluated, and when the basins were originally developed, they were designed for a 10-year event with a discharge rate that is now stricter. We have identified that they would need some additional capacity, but I do think that the combination of the detention basin and possibly some underground storm sewers that they're already proposing would accommodate that and meet the requirement. We also note that the exact configuration of the water main, sanitary sewer, and storm sewers will be reviewed during detailed engineering. And we also note that the approaches to Lion Center Drive must meet the Road Commission's requirements. Now, as Brian mentioned, as part of this process, we did have the traffic report, which was done for both the Watermark and ZOT projects. We had that evaluated by a sub-consultant, and the firm name is GHD. And last week we had a call after their review came out with the applicants and their engineers. And one of the items that GHD identified as a concern was the southern approach, the boulevard approach to Watermark. They had a concern regarding the distance to the roundabout, as well as the future approach for the outlets that are on the east side of Lion Center Drive that will be developed in the future. Where the boulevard was previously located, there could have been some conflicting turning movements, and the recommendation was that this approach move to the north, and the Road Commission was also part of that virtual meeting that we had last week. So I would support the revised plan that is on your screen that Brian is sharing with you with the two buildings before the approach, south of the approach. And I can also get into the other concerns that were raised. There was a similar concern with the ZOT project, but also walkability was evaluated, and in the traffic study under figure 11 is a pedestrian connectivity, which I emailed to the planning commissioners today. It's also in your packet. That does show the proposed sidewalks, the existing sidewalks, and then there are some gaps in this general area that I would encourage the planning commission to discuss as well. One other item in our review letter, item number 6, we do just point out that there in the grading plan, there are some significant retaining walls along the west and north property lines varying in height from 1 to 11 feet. And retaining walls in excess of 30 inches require structural reviews and will be under the jurisdiction of the building official. So I just wanted to note that as well. At this time, I don't have any other comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Crossing, okay. All right, thank you, Leslie. All right, let's start. I guess we'll run down. Patty, did you have any questions for Leslie or Brian?
No, are we going to have the public hearing and then?
We are.
And then I'd like to make my comment.
Okay, all right. Well, let me go down. Chuck, Mr. Chuck, any questions?
Nothing
before
at
the
this time, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Mr. Hoffman? Any questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Sure.
So the product here is basically the same building, right? Before we had looked at much more higher multifamily apartments, condos, duplexes. This is basically like duplexes, correct? I'm not, I love the architecture. I love the style. I just a little disappointed that there's not the mix of, this is going to attract pretty much a certain crowd, where the other projects seem to gather a lot of different types of, crowds, younger, older, new homeowners, or young adults. But this seems very much geared for one type of group. That's all. I was just looking forward to more of a variety of different products. But I love this. This is like so beautiful.
The units themselves inside range from 1-bedroom to 3-bedroom units. So there is a fair mix inside the structures, but you're correct in that all 19 would be this design.
Do the end units not get a garage? They have to park outside? Or no, I see one garage door on the end. Not that it really matters, I'm just.
Maybe Garrett could jump in and answer that question for you.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was allowed to unmute myself yet, but we have 16 units and 10 of garages for the product. And so it's a mix. You can look here on the where Brian's zooming in. We try to disperse the 10 garages across the biggest unit mix as possible to allow for the greatest diversity between units with garages and units without garages. So right now 10 of the units have garages and the end units do have garages, but it's intermixed on which ones have direct access to the garages and which ones will have to park in the surface parking or the detached garages.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoffman, any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Pennington?
I'm good right now too. Thank you.
Good. Okay, all right. Mr. Radke?
I'm good also right now. Thank you.
Carl Town?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the review by GHD. And I'm really happy with their recommendation on the new entrance. And I would support the new plan over the previous plan. That would just be a comment from me. That's all.
Okay. All right. Thanks, sir. Okay. All right. We will open up the public hearing. Or no, we won't. I'm sorry. First, we're going to hear from the applicant. That would be you, Garrett.
Mike, I think I'm going to start. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Tony Antone from the Cajoining Companies.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Mike. I just want to briefly say thank you to the Planning Commission. These are crazy times, as we all know. And as you can imagine, having a couple of deals in the pipeline are only going one of two ways. They're going to stay on or they're going to fall off. We're experiencing fall off in other cities and townships in Michigan. And frankly, the reason that this one is, both of these, Watermark and Zot, are staying on track is because Lyon Township's willing to have this type of meeting virtually to keep these projects potentially moving forward for a fall groundbreaking. So I just wanted to say thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Chris and to Garrett to present the revised plans, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Members of the Plan Commission. Thank you. This is Chris Alexander with Watermark. And, first of all, I want to thank Lyon Township for allowing us this venue. These are crazy times. And it's definitely appreciated that we have the opportunity to keep meeting with you and keep talking about our project in this virtual fashion. So thank you. We also appreciate all the work that your staff has done. There's been review of submittals, lots of questions, and Brian, Catherine, Leslie, all have been working with us pretty diligently on everything to date. So thank you to the team across the board for what you've done so far. Our team here, led by Garrett, he'll speak here in a second, along with Bob Emmerine with Sieber Keast and Julie Kroll of Fleece and Vandenbrink, are going to present our plan and maybe further define some of the differences between the plan that we submitted back in January and address some of the comments that came up. You know, I thought I would mention, you know, just again that, you know, given that these are unprecedented times, and a lot has changed, in fact, dramatically changed since the last time we met. I thought I'd just quickly address how Watermark is viewing our business right now as our country sort of transitions back into an opening up of the economy. I guess, first of all, I would just say, you know, our priority remains focused on the health of our team members, our residents, our tenants, the families that live in our projects. We've made health and personal safety a priority as a company. And we're going to continue to make sure that everyone, including people in the field and our construction projects, keep our properties, the existing properties and the ones under construction running and progressing. And throughout all of this, a lot of our company has been able to work from home, just as a lot of us have on this call. We continue to move our projects forward in 2020. I want to mention that in late 2019, I don't know if we were lucky or good, I'll take lucky, but we as a company raised a $100 million equity fund to fund projects in 2020. It was successful and allows us here in 2020 to continue to focus on our pipeline, and that's what we're doing. You may ask what's going on with our existing portfolio of projects. We've had very strong leasing and rent payment across the board. We're in the high 80s in terms of rent collection, which is very good in our industry right now. And overall, we remain really bullish on the long-term viability of multifamily. A lot of companies are pulling projects back, but we believe in the product that we're doing and in the markets that we're in. There will be a slowing of this product, but we as a company and the projects that we have on the board are going to continue. And we hope that this project in Lyon is one of them. You know, to the extent possible, we want to address some longer term questions. You know, in terms of our company, we believe we're well positioned to work through this short-term issue that's gone on with COVID-19 and come out of it much, much stronger. We have a very strong cash position, as I mentioned, with our equity fund, and we're going to capitalize on opportunities as they come along. And again, as I mentioned, multifamily as an industry has done historically well during turbulent times, and we expect that to continue. So I'll close here with just saying we believe, as I said before, very strongly in this project, and it's our hope that we can continue to move it down the path to approval and start a construction project in your community in 2020. I'll turn it over to Garrett, and he can get in a little more details on the project and the changes that we've made.
Thanks, Chris. Can everybody see my screen okay? Just the presentation page?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to walk through a bit of the details. I'm going to start with the previous plan that we brought earlier this year. And so the previous plan is what's shown here. It shows 340 units. There's a mix of 3-story and 2-story product. And there's a density of 17.32 units per acre. And you can see that the location for our curb cut was located here. And so our new plan looks like this. And so I'm just going to walk through a bit of the details. So for some of the comments, we've reduced our project 10% in size. So we've reduced our unit count down to 304 from 340. This in turn has reduced our density to around the 15.5 that Brian had mentioned. Additionally, we have provided additional sidewalk connectivity for some of the comments, which you can see over here. This would provide potential connectivity to the northern park. With the removal of the 3-story product, we have added 52 direct access garages. We believe this both increases the quality and reduces any seas of parking. In the past, we had a parking lot up here that is now able to be removed due to the internalization of garages. We have enhanced our landscaping plan to further accentuate our eastern frontage while screening the western buffer. If you look along the western buffer, you'll see a significant wall almost of trees that Brian had mentioned. One quick fix to what Brian had mentioned, and I'll try and zoom in here. I'll see if it'll let me. This area right here was not shown to have a significant amount of plantings because of a telephone easement that sits back there. And so we have done our best to screen that where we can, but there's not a whole lot we can do within the easement area. The neighbor who had spoke at the last planning commission meeting asking for a reduction in plantings sits right here, I believe. And we have not heard back from that neighbor yet while we have offered our landscape plan to them for review. I just wanted to touch on that there, but thanks for mentioning it, Brian. Next thing is, after reviewing with the traffic authorities, we have moved our main entrance to provide 150 feet of car storage from the roundabout to allow people to stack and not back up the roundabout. Additionally, we have provided turning tapers into each of our access points to allow for people to turn in and not back up the middle of the roadway. Lastly, from a 30,000-foot view, our clubhouse has been relocated to a central location, which we believe better serves our tenants to allow them to utilize all of our amenities without having to walk across the entire property. It's a small fix, but we believe it's highly beneficial. So next, I'm going to switch back and forth between the two plans here. And I've done my best with our team to accentuate the areas that we're talking about by highlighting them. So I'm sorry if it doesn't come through on your screen, but I'll do my best to showcase it. So the area up here had 3-story product, and due to some of the comments regarding density, we've moved that all the way down to 2-story everywhere. And so that area now looks like this. Beyond that, here are 2 elevations of what the 3-story product used to look like and the 2-story product we are providing. Of course, the 3-story is a photorealistic rendering, and the 2-story is just a SketchUp model. But the goal with this is to show that the 3-story product was significantly taller than the 2-story product. And so we're hoping that provides an additional benefit as well to the neighbors. Next, we have worked on the distance between these 2 buildings and the 3510 Golden Valley Drive for some of the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. So these buildings used to be 54 feet from the property line, beyond 54 feet to the property line with a 40-foot buffer and 106 feet to the actual home. As of right now, these buildings have been relocated and realigned to showcase 85 feet from the property line, which is double the buffer, and 138 feet to the home, with increased landscaping in that area where possible. Next, I know there were a number of comments, pretty much all besides Stefan, on this building that was a little bit awkward on its alignment to Line Center Drive. And so we have realigned that building to be exactly tangent to Line Center Drive to accommodate the comments we received at the previous meeting. And then lastly, we have chosen our high quality farmhouse design for the architecture for this project. We are providing or proposing to provide additional stone along these 5 buildings that would front Line Center Drive and Grand River Avenue. I hope the highlighting comes through to show the 5 buildings, but in case it does not, it is these buildings that would receive the additional stone treatment. And just to show you, here are the 2 elevations. Stone and returns have been provided in these areas additionally beyond what was provided in the past. And then lastly, there was a comment from Brian about the clubhouse elevation. And so just to talk about it a little bit, this entrance right here is where our leasing entrance is. This is where we would like all prospective tenants to go. where they would go get a tour, where somebody would come to the coffee area of our clubhouse. And this area over here is used by tenants only. And so our goal with this is to really accentuate this portion of the building, to really draw the eye there. So there's no question from prospective tenants on where to go, and there's no confusion there. And it makes it really easy and seamless for them to find a parking spot, come in. And so that was our goal with this. The comment was generally along the roof line and how the right side was done up a bit more. That was intentional, but there is an option out there for us to pivot to kind of what is shown on the back side of our elevation, which is more activated. It's where our pool is located. And I know it might be difficult to see in this elevation here, but it's more of a porch feel. And there is a roof line that would continue all the way across this building here. That would break it up a little bit. So we, of course, prefer the first elevation. We think it accentuates the entrance better for the leasing group, but we'll leave it up to the Planning Commission's recommendation. We can easily accommodate either. And that is all that we have prepared for tonight. So with that, thanks for your time. Open it up to any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks, Garrett. Why don't we, most of the time, we have the public hearing before we ask the applicant. Does everyone want to wait until we hear from the public?
Can do.
Yeah, let's open it up to the public.
Okay, all right, good. All right, thanks, Garrett. Okay, we're going to open up the public hearing. Anyone, questions, comments? We try to limit to 3 to 4 minutes, but feel free, state your name and address. And let's start.
Mr. Confetti, just one other point to point out, I guess. They need to press *9 on their keypad, and that will alert us that we will need to unmute their audio at that point. So *9 is the key.
All right, roger that.
It's like we have no one.
Ken, can you tell if?
Yes, I see
okay.
I see no *9 hands, virtual hands raised from the telephone call-ins that we have in the meeting at the moment.
Ken, this is Lisa Anderson. I do see a hand raised for
I
a
do
phone
too.
number 248.
Here we go. Yep, we got one
Okay.
here. Okay, caller with the last 4 digits of 5526. I'm going to unmute your phone line. Please state your name and address.
Hi, this is Deanna Cunningham. I live at 30544 Golden Valley, New Hudson. I am looking at the plans, and they are difficult to read from what I was looking at, but I am a little worried about some of the markings I've seen on the trees that I believe are mine. So I wanted to figure out who to contact to have that discussion on their plans for those trees, if they were removals or if they were to be left. And additionally, looking at the plans, I think what I'm seeing is barriers right in front of my house, and also not understanding what I'm seeing in terms of the vegetation planting. So I was wondering how to get more information on that.
Ryan,
am I free to respond?
Go ahead, Garrett.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Deanna, I did get your email, and I replied to you, so let me know if you did not get that. But I'm happy to walk through some of these things with you. And so let me jump back to the plan, just maybe to do it while everyone's on right here.
Thank you.
Deanna, can you see my screen okay?
I am seeing the Watermark front page. I've not seen the plan.
It may take a quick second, so let me know when you catch up.
Yeah, Garrett, there's about a 20-second delay for the YouTube video at this point.
Gotcha. Well, Deanna, we did conduct a tree survey, and they go out and mark a number of trees, both on our property and off, just for us to denote what is on our property, what is not, and what we need to take care of while we're doing our grading exercises or planting ourselves. And so I believe, looking at our tree survey, there were a couple that might have been marked on your property, and we're aware of that. So I'm happy to walk through the tree survey with you, and even have one of our engineers walk out on site with you, talk about it specifically. but we will not
Okay.
impact any trees that are on your property. We will keep everything on ours. And landscaping wise, it's our intention to meet, and I believe we're doubling code on the western buffer in terms of the plantings that we're able to produce here. So I'm happy to walk through those with you in a little bit more detail if the plans are difficult to read. But if you have any direct concerns that you'd want me to make sure I'm prepared to answer, feel free to let me know.
So I'm guessing that it's just strictly vegetation that's going to be the boundaries to my property. And I'm really hoping they're more evergreens than they are leaf-bearing trees that are going to require a lot more maintenance on my behalf. So that would be my main concern because of the way that the leaves blow. So I would prefer those to be large evergreens, however, versus like maples or oaks or anything of that sort along that line.
Yeah, and in order to provide the visual buffer that was brought up, most of these trees are going to be evergreens. But I'll walk through the planting schedule with you specifically, and we can address any concerns you have specifically around that area. So
okay.
If you didn't get my email, you can try shooting me another one and I'll try replying to you again. And we can walk through these things specifically, but we're happy to adjust the planting schedule, within reason with you to make sure it's accommodating.
All right. Thank you very much. I did not get your email, so I'll look for it again.
All right. It's probably my fault. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you. Next.
Okay, I'm scrolling the list right now, Mr. Completti. I apologize for the last call. The list wasn't fully displayed, but now as I go up and down the full list, oh, we do have another hand raised. Caller with the last four digits of 6778. We will unmute your line. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, hi, this is Steve Porter. My address is 28200 Seville Drive in South Lyon. And the question was, I couldn't see how much the density came down from previous. And I know the current plan shows 15 houses per acre or units per acre. I'm sorry, what was the previous density?
Was it 17? Was it 17.3?
Correct.
So it went from 340 units to 304.
Right. And then, so that was a drop of roughly 40 units. It's a drop of 2 units per acre. And what I didn't see was there a review of the traffic study? Was there a new one done with the new number of units?
Leslie?
Yes, there was. I can let Leslie comment on that.
Right.
Yes, the traffic study was just recently reviewed with the current plan.
Okay. And I didn't hear, the traffic study was 252 pages. I apologize for not reading every one. I know I sound like a politician, but the pathway, there was a lot of, I believe one of the committee members asked about this being a walkable community and people walking from this area to, say, the Walmart area, Starbucks, things like that. Was there any discussion about how pedestrians would get safely from the northwest side of that intersection of Lion Center Drive and Pontiac Trail to the northeast side?
That is something that the Planning Commission will discuss tonight. There is a map in the traffic impact study that shows the gaps in the sidewalk network. And I expect that they'll be discussing it after the public hearing.
Okay. And again, the reason being is that we're supposed to be a walkable community, and that's one of the benefits of having that walkable community is being able to get from one place to the other without dodging vehicles. I'm still think 15 units per acre is a lot, but glad to see that you're reducing the height from 3 stories to 2. Overall, I think it's moving in the right direction. I still think it is too many for that location, and that'll be in my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay, I am scrolling up and down the list. Anyone that would like to make a comment, again, *9 on your keypad will raise your hand and we will unmute your line. Okay. I am seeing no other virtual hands raised at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Let me ask Let me ask, Kelly, did you get a copy of the letters that you could put into record that we received at the township?
I believe they're all online.
Okay. All right. Ken, any more?
We see no virtual hands raised at this point.
Okay. All right. We'll give them one more minute.
Want me to make a motion to close the public hearing, Mike?
If you like, I was going to give them another minute, but that's fine. It doesn't sound like anyone else is waiting. So
moved.
Okay. We have a motion. We're closing the public. Support. Closing the public hearing. We don't need to vote on that. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Back to the commission. Patricia, would you like to start?
I would, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to really thank Watermark, because I think they actually really listened to the planning commission and the township board. And that's pretty refreshing to me. So I'm going to go for my comments first. And number one, I love the Boulevard entrance. Very glad that you moved it. I appreciate that you moved the buildings from the rear, the two that I would, well, especially the one in the back. I really like that you did the 2 stories. I like that you're connecting with our residents, which Garrett, I really appreciate you offering that to Deanna. And those are the kind of partners we want to partner with, that you really understand that our residents are so important to us. I also want to say that I like the style of the buildings too. So again, I appreciate the extra brick on the front, whatever, 5 buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that shows a real commitment to us. You know, again, this is a beautiful area for us and we're happy to see it developed. And that's another thing. I just want you to know that these projects are just as important to Lyon Township as they are to you. So I'm glad that I have to give a little kudo to Ken from Merge Live, because he helped us with this, and Catherine, our planning commission secretary, did an amazing job. So I want to give a little, because this is new to us. Also, I think Steve Porter had some great comments about the density, but actually I'm pretty happy that they went to the 2 stories and went down to 204. My one and only thing that I'm worried about is I want to see the sidewalks extended. And I'm not sure exactly how we do that on other people's property, but just like Steve Porter mentioned, that's really important. We're trying to move people to, you know, so they can go to the Cottage Inn or the dance studio or Big B Coffee or over to, you know, over into the Walmart complex over there. So that's my one and only thing, because otherwise I think you guys did a great job. And I have no complaints other than that. And we need to figure that out. And I like the plan. Good job. Very good. And those are my comments.
Great. Thanks, Patty. Mr. Chuck.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief and not redundant. However, I echo the same as my colleague. I think they did a great job. You know, we sit in front of many developers, and you guys from Watermark took our advice, our things we needed to be looked at, and you came back with solid solutions. On a bigger picture, you know, I call this a win-win-win. I've been in the community 14 years, and I just drove by a lot of weeds and grass. Well, I think our community wins. I think Kajoyan wins, and I think our owners, our landlords win. So this is great for the community. Long overdue in terms of times have changed. The big box, the retail wasn't coming, and smart communities, they change on the fly. And I think this demonstrates what we did as a community, and I applaud everyone that was involved. So that's all I have. I do one more thing. I am concerned with the walkability, because that is one of the things we're trying to really establish. And it is kind of crazy at that corner. So I'm sorry, Leslie, I did not get the information that you sent out, so I won't say any more on what potentially may be in that map, but that is one thing that still has to be somewhat ironed out. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir. I did have a question. Tony, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Sort of unrelated, and things have changed since last time we spoke, but you said there was hope or possibly a plan in the future of along Grand River, maybe some restaurants going in that are adjacent to that area.
Yeah,
There were like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
Yes.
the area that's being marked right now, those are pegged for retail outlets / restaurants. Obviously, in this environment, we're not getting new projects being presented to us right now, but that is the plan. Would be that once we get this many residents in the area, we are marketing those for restaurants.
Okay, all right, and that's what we're here for, to look for the future. My concern again is the walkability. I don't think anyone wants to cross the street at a roundabout. I know I don't. I know the pedestrian crossing is not recommended, but I'm afraid people will just be, and this isn't addressed to you, Tony, I'm just in general. I'm afraid people will be jaywalking, I guess you call it jaywalking, across that roundabout to get across from the apartments to the restaurants or wherever they're going. So something's going to have to be figured out on the walkability of this. But okay, thanks, Tony. Appreciate your comments. Who is going alphabetical here? Mr. Hoffman.
I do like the position of that boulevard better. It really is centrally located and gives people better, options to get where they're going. It's close to the other one, but I know for fire trucks and stuff that when it's just a convenient one, but I really think that the centered boulevard really is a regal and luxurious kind of thing going on in the middle. Again, my comments about the products is now changed, but it's still a beautiful product. I like the modern farmhouse design that will go so well in Lyon Township. Very attractive. The walkability issue is something we could all, we make other developers put into sidewalk funds or otherwise to have a public, a way, outside of the property, but I don't know how that would all work out in the legalities of it, but there's always a will. I just don't know how to find the way yet. But it would make the commercial and enhance the viability of the commercial district if we have this 200 and plus more residents to utilize it. So I'm excited. This is a great thing, and I think it'll go well. And that's it.
Okay, good.
Nice note. I'm sorry, Mike. Garrett, would you mind stopping sharing your screen? I can put up the graphic from the traffic study that Leslie mentioned. Thank you.
Sorry for hogging it.
No, you're good. So this is included in the FNV traffic study. I know Julie's on the line, but it does illustrate in red where existing sidewalks are. So the north side of Lyon Center Drive is already an existing sidewalk that runs that whole length. So really the gaps that we're looking at are from the roundabout to the detention pond. And then the blue is what would be proposed for the ZOT development. Then we've just got these couple gaps at Taco Bell and then Bell Tire. And just so the Planning Commission is aware, Taco Bell is pretty recent at that point in time. And I know Tony has correctly pointed this out to us, that the whole line crossing development was not planned to have a sidewalk on the south side of the road when it was originally planned. Given that we're opening this up and given that we're potentially putting in, 700 to 1,000 residents, that connectivity for pedestrians becomes infinitely more important. So we may end up, we should really figure out and push for a solution to fill these gaps as quickly as we can.
Hey, Brian, I have a question, as long as you've got the map up. Do we know the
Yep.
distance or the total, what is it with the two gaps? What's the footage and distance?
If you give me a minute, I can measure.
Sure, that's fine. It's probably out there somewhere, but thought I'd ask you.
Don't know off the top of my head, but I do have Google Earth. So give me 2 seconds.
Mike, is it okay if I speak?
Please.
Okay, I just want to make I know everybody's aware of this, but I realized that back in the day, it was supposed to be big box stores, and that's probably why there wasn't sidewalk on both sides. But now we have changed the complex of this piece of property, and now it's a huge part is residential. Plus, we're going to have the, well, if it goes through, and Zot's going to be there, and now we're going to have our restaurants. So it makes logical sense to have them on both sides.
To answer Jim's question, from the roundabout where the sidewalk ends to the detention facility is about 200 feet. The Taco Bell site is a little over 150 feet wide. And then this remaining gap at Altair is 250 feet.
So if my math is correct, that's approximately what, 600 feet? 3, 4, that's about 600 feet of sidewalk we need to figure out. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Mr. Pennington.
Yeah, I'll be quick also, just to reiterate everybody else's opinions. I really like the new entrance. I appreciate the 2-story and the less density. And agree, it would be nice to have sidewalks on the south side also. I don't think that there's ever a big box store going to come to this location, either one of these locations, especially now after this pandemic. So I think these two projects both are the direction we need to go. That's all for me.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Radke? Kurt's muted.
Watermark,
There he
you
is.
guys listen to the commission. I'm sorry, Mike. Can you hear me?
No, go. I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Garrett, it was your customer service with Mrs. Cunningham was amazing. That was, to Patty's point, that was awesome. We wish everybody would treat the residents like that of our township. So I like the product and thank you. Job well done.
All right. Good. Thanks, Kurt. Last but not least, Mr. Town.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm going to skip everything as far as the project as everybody's hit the nail on the head. It is an awesome project. I like the way they responded again. But to get back to the walkability, there was comments made in the traffic study on the gateway treatment for pedestrians. If somebody could explain that statement for me. Gateway treatment for the pedestrians.
Leslie, Brian.
I would ask if Julie's on the call, I'd ask that she comment on it.
And she's from GHD.
No, Julie is the traffic engineer who drafted this report.
Okay. Okay, Julie.
You're up.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Trying to see if I could share my screen. Okay. Give me 1 second to pull up the page. So right now the traffic control at the roundabout is limited to these two signs, which is this advanced pedestrian sign and this yield here to pedestrian sign at the crosswalk location. Pedestrian gateway treatment is a new thing that MDOT's been pushing at their locations where you have high volumes of pedestrians to make drivers more aware that there's pedestrians in the crosswalk. So the pedestrian gateway itself is basically these R1-6 signs that you place on the curb line. So these would be placed at the roundabout, and these would be off to the side, so they wouldn't be in the roadway, but adjacent to the roadway. And what it does is these vertical panels actually, the driver's eye, it appears as if the road's narrower, and makes them more aware of pedestrians in the area. So that's what the gateway treatment is basically to draw your eye in and make you focus on, there's something here in the road I need to be looking for. So that's all the gateway treatment is.
Okay, so in order to develop the signage, this R16 gateway signs, should we make this part of the development and the developer put those signs in? Because I think they're pretty important. Brian, you want to answer that?
Well, I'd say the most difficult part about them is they're not a permanent fixture. So there's something that get placed there typically seasonally. You wouldn't put these in the road while you're plowing or things like that. So while funding these is certainly something that we could ask of the developer, I think implementation and working with the county might be the larger barrier there, and we can figure out how to do that. There's no question. It's just something logistically we have to figure out.
Brian, can I just add to that comment? The Road Commission for Oakland County RCOC has recently put in these gateway treatments at their roundabouts as a new standard of signage. So this roundabout that was put in at Lyon Township was one of the earlier ones on their system. Their newest ones on their system actually are right near my house here in Orion Township on Baldwin Road, and they have installed permanent fixtures of this gateway treatment.
So with that said, I think that I brought it up specifically to the developer of this property and both of the applicants to work with Oakland County Road Commission before they came back with them. And I know the Road Commission makes the final decision, but I sure would like to hear from the developers on both pieces, and well, on this piece, Watermark, since we're talking Watermark, to find out if we could get this permanent treatment, at least on the roundabout there. And that's not going to address the crossing at Milford Road and Town Center Drive. Those are my thoughts. These are something that really has to be, in my opinion, etched in stone before we do the final.
So just to be,
Carl?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, Carl, have you been downtown Brighton, the roundabout, the downtown area, how they have that lit up?
Yes.
And you're talking similar, something like that?
Well, I have not seen the Oakland. Yes. Yeah, that'd be, or a pedestrian crossing on Milford Road. the road commission, and I know we
Mm.
always talk about it, that they're never gonna do anything till we have a problem. But my issue
Right.
is, we already have a problem, and if we can work with the developers to get something done before final approval on this. I mean, I like the whole project. I like where we're going with this, but I see a lot of issues on the roundabout and crossing on Milford Road. And I would be remiss if I didn't, as a planning commissioner, try to address that.
Okay, very good. Anything else
And
to
then my
add?
second, my second
Yeah.
thought is the path to the park. I also brought up when that was mentioned to talk to the people that own the crossing road there, and I'd like to have an answer on that crossing before final as well.
Okay,
Because we can't have a road that goes nowhere, and you can't go into a road that they barely use. I know that area well because I worked a lot on the ball diamonds that are up in that area, and we moved all our play equipment because everything was sinking. So, we want to get to the park at least to be able to go down into the kids area, but we have to have a way to cross it. Anybody have any thoughts or ideas? I digress.
I think it's something that the township can help facilitate a discussion with Republic.
Do you think that could be done before final?
I think so.
That'd be good enough for me. How about Leslie on the roundabouts? Some of these permanent fixtures like Julie was talking about. Is there any way we can light a fire under Oakland County? Maybe.
Well, do you mean Oakland County to do separately, or that the projects do as part of their project?
I don't know if it's a cost factor, and if it isn't that much, maybe the developer might be able to heed some of that cost. And I know this project isn't going to be done tomorrow, but if we could get some kind of a commitment before final that, going forward, maybe by the end of December, it would be put in, or spring of next year. I mean, as well as a pedestrian crossing that we desperately need on Milford Road.
I think that that's something you can ask the applicants or applicants
Okay.
and have that part of your discussion tonight. And both of these projects with regards to the sidewalk, I think are somewhat intertwined. And I just think that's a fair discussion to have, including the roundabout. And if you're looking for the temporary signs that Julie showed an example of there, or what exactly you're looking for. Road Commission typically doesn't do improvements unless there are issues, though, after the fact.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to ask the applicant from Watermark to address what I just discussed, what their feelings are.
So just to be clear on this, so that the comment is to kind of give the gateway treatment to the southern roundabout that's there along Grand River and Line Center Drive. And what's missing from that right now from that treatment is those bollard style signs. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Julie could speak to that. Julie talked about a permanent fix that they came up with in Lake Orion. So that's probably the fix that we would need. Would you concur, Julie?
Yes, it looks very similar to what was shown in that picture, but it's so new that I couldn't find a picture of it. But it's basically the R1-6 signs that are mounted adjacent to the pedestrian ramps.
Okay, thank you. So yes, that's what I'm referring to then. With the permanent.
Yeah. So Julie, How many
Yeah,
of those
please.
would we need? I think Watermark, and I don't want to speak for Zot, given we're somewhat together here, but we'd be happy to partake in helping out with that, as soon as we're able to.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we figure out who to work together with to establish a scope, and then we can understand that and figure out how to implement it in the next submittal.
Who's speaking?
We just need to know.
this is, oh, that was Chris Alexander
this is-
from Watermark.
This is Chris Alexander with Watermark. So
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, this is Tony
Yes.
Antone. I think, yes, since this is the preliminary stage and we have another meeting, I think that we could certainly come back by the next meeting and be able to show you exactly what it looks like, how it's getting funded. That's an easy one. It might go in the association. We might do a cost sharing of some sort. I think whatever makes the most sense for all parties involved, that's what we want to do. So I'm not worried about it. It shouldn't hold us up.
Very
Okay.
good. I like
Agreed.
that.
Mr.
All right.
Chair,
Thanks, Tony. Yes.
Lisa Anderson, I guess
Lisa.
I would just add to that. I think that's a great suggestion, Tony, and maybe given the comments from the planning commission, add to that extending the sidewalk along the south. Maybe that needs a conversation with Taco Bell and Bell Tire. It seems that the sidewalk along that area would benefit all those uses. So maybe while you're looking at the benchmarks that you've been talking about, you can add to that the extension of the sidewalk if the planning commission wants you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like she said.
We've already started looking at that, and our intention would be to come back at the next stage with kind of our findings, and want to make sure we could actually go on someone else's property and do that. But I bet you it's right away. I just want to have all that that kind of conversation with Bill Barris, Lisa, as you know, and make sure we're doing it the right way.
Sure, and I would assume, I'm guessing, but I would think if you approach Taco Bell and pitch this, that, a sidewalk there would be a sure benefit to them with a big residential property going in. So they might be willing to get on board and help out.
I would agree, Lisa. You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't know why they would turn that down. It's similar to the traffic light at Kroger, not to get off the track, but it benefits the retailer.
So I appreciate everybody's commitment to get this all taken care of by final. With that said, it has 100% of my approval to move this forward tonight. And that would be my last comment.
Okay. Thanks, Carl. Brian, did you revise your recommendation on this? You did.
You did.
No,
I did not. That
I thought
review was
from the
based on.
original.
Correct, I did not. The only letter you have from me is dated April.
The 14th?
16th. Where'd my date go? April 14th, yes.
14th. Okay, it was just the one. Okay, all right.
But I will note that the things that I was looking for clarification have been addressed, and the modified entrance on the south hits the last one, and probably the big one that traffic is satisfied.
All right. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Well, we could make the motion. Let's see.
Would be to recommend approval to the board.
Once stress plan approval to the board. Yes.
Correct.
Carl.
That would be my motion, to recommend approval to the board on AP -16-51 on the line crossing PD amendment, and with everything that we talked about tonight that is in the record, as well as the new submittal of the plans that have been submitted, that were dated, I believe, today. Is that right, Brian?
No, the new boulevard entrance is dated May 6th.
Okay, May 6th. And I think by tonight, they've met all the criteria on section 702 and as well as section 703 with all their new submittals and that we talked about tonight. So my recommendation would be recommend approval to the board.
I'll support
Mr.
that.
Chairman, can I just make one minor correction? It's
Please.
AP-19-51, not 16-51.
Got it. 16.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Good catch.
AP 1951.
Sure. I didn't catch who
It
seconded.
was me,
that,
Mr.
Chuck?
Chairman. Yes,
Okay.
I'll support
Okay.
that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any other comments?
Yeah, one last comment to Garrett. How long of a build out? How many years?
Chris, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're sitting at a 24-month construction period. Is that correct?
Yes, 24 months.
Okay, so about 2 years from when you start. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, Kelly, if you take roll.
Kelly, you're muted.
All right, I'm on.
There you go.
Patricia
You're up.
Carcone,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman, Stefan. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, for
There you
sure.
go. Thank you. Ron Pennington,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Carl Town.
Yes.
All right, great. Motion moves forward. Thank you very much. Good job, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
If you don't mute yourself, then you never have to unmute it. Simple
I won't go
logic.
there.
Brian, Brian, when you're ready, AP 1950 Lion Cross and PD Verzat Auto.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to put up my screen again. But to Jim's comment, I've got kids. It's a miracle that in the hour and a half we've been on the phone, they have been relatively quiet. So
That's good.
Okay. On the other side of the road, on the south side of Lion Center Drive, is the proposed Zot auto dealership. If you remember at concept review, there were two plans presented, and ultimately the Planning Commission and then subsequently the board agreed that moving the structure to the center of the site, the actual building to the center of the site, was ultimately the best solution for everyone. So for preliminary review, you have a just under 34,000 square foot building with about 6,700 square feet of potential additional building area on the south side of the structure. There is 630 parking spaces on the site, so that is comprised of employee parking, customer parking, inventory, temporary storage locations. All in, they're a little over 80% lot coverage for the use. Up at the front, both entrances, the northwest corner and the northeast corner, there are proposed Jeep mountains, which if you were able to take a look at the materials that were submitted, we have some clarification on what those are going to look like for the corporate standards. There is also a proposed sign out front and significant landscaping. The comments in our review letter dated April 22nd relate specifically to the March 16th, 2020 plans. However, similar to the watermark proposal, we do have updated plans addressing some of the comments that we and other consultants had initially. I'll run through those quickly, but first I want to talk about associated with this use, there's a couple amendments that need to be considered for the PD. The first is the use, of course, which is the same as we're considering for watermark, but the second would be to allow overhead doors that face Lion Center Drive. So those are right here, if you can follow my mouse, on the east side of the structure. Those would be for the quick service uses inside of the facility. I'll note that the overhead doors, we do have information supporting or clarifying what those doors are going to look like. Let's see if I can grab those here. So if you can follow my screen, those are submitted in your application or in your review materials. The architectural standards of the line crossing PD would need to be updated to permit metal panels per the facade. The building facade that is on here right now is predominantly brick, but you do have a material palette in your review materials that talks about the wood that's being used in addition to the metal as an accent. Additionally, the ask is for 5 signs on the main building and a monument sign that would exceed 45 square feet. Currently in the sign standards for line crossing, a business is permitted 1 wall sign and no monument sign. And then finally, the applicant notes that total hard surface coverage is not more than 75% of the property, and that includes the detention pond to the west. So during the concept review, we heard a lot about connectivity for the building in addition to the discussion on placement of the building. Traffic was an identified concern. Again, that's been addressed in the traffic study. One thing that was noted in the GHD discussion was the location of the driveway. I'll go back to the site plan here. Oh no, I just closed it. I'm sorry. The location of the driveway conflicts slightly with the location of Tractor Supply across the street. Forgive me. On the updated plan here, you can see that the driveway for the Zod Auto dealership makes use of the existing curb cut that's on the south side of the road. But there's an identified conflict with the western driveway of Tractor Supply Company across the street. And so one of the things that needs to be rectified for this plan, and I know the applicants can talk through the process on this, is either this driveway needs to be modified, moved a little bit to the east to line up directly with Tractor Supply so that there's no turning conflicts. Or there was the discussion at our meeting last week about working with Tractor Supply to potentially change their western access to a right turn only in and a right turn only out so that there wouldn't be any vehicular conflicts with this proposed driveway. So they may be able to, the applicants may be able to address that for us. In terms of recognizable benefits, mirroring the comments that were heard during the concept review, everybody sees the value in having a partner like the Zod dealer for providing providing this service to a regional base. One of the things that we continue to talk about and has been brought up tonight already is the connectivity. So we want to make sure that that sidewalks are provided in some capacity along this property in front of the detention facility and then finally down to the roundabout. One thing that I do want clarification on, or we'd like to clarify tonight, is the sheet A21 that you're looking at here shows a sidewalk in front of the detention facility. Later on in the updated materials, sheet L1 stops the sidewalk right here at the western property boundary for the dealership. So we want to clarify what the plan is for that sidewalk. And it'd be our hope and recommendation that that gets installed all the way to the roundabout. Similar to the Watermark development, I found it was quite interesting that the anticipated daily traffic for this site for the dealership use is just over 1,100 vehicles. And per Julie's traffic study, if this were to be developed as retail or some sort of more traditional commercial uses, we'd anticipate upwards of 3,200 trips per day. So it's slightly less than would be expected, or significantly less than would be expected for a truly commercial daily use on the site. In terms of compatibility with the master plan, we note again, an earlier discussion at the concept review was how we address the downtown vision plan's ideal for a greenway that runs east-west, not only through this property, but across the road and upwards into the park. The more we think about it and the more we consider the comments of the Planning Commission and the board, it doesn't make a lot of sense for a walkway to be jammed in the south side of this property here. We have a detention basin that it would terminate at, so we would prefer that additional resources be spent on either completing the network along the length of Lion Center Drive or increasing the width of the walkway or the surrounding green space as the sidewalk or as these properties develop on the outlots. Some substantial landscaping or benches or things like that that increase the desirability of that walkway may be more beneficial. Per the requirements, the applicants have provided a fiscal impact analysis. That's worked with Oakland County's Economic Development and Community Affairs Department to prepare this analysis based on a real investment of approximately 14 million. The total tax capture for the township, as well as local and regional and school taxes, would be $337,000 annually. The impact analysis also reports on some anticipated induced employment and induced housing requirements. So there's an estimate that 106 additional jobs would be created and the need for 17 new housing units. So those are an induced job would be something like a new restaurant opens and needs to be staffed to support the needs of this facility itself. In terms of open usable space, there are not truly amenities that are proposed on the site for pedestrians or for open space, nor would we expect them to be. There is a fair amount of landscaping proposed on the site given the large amount of lot coverage. I mentioned before on this property specifically, not including the detention facility, the lot coverage is just over 83%. And by comparison, I did a rough estimate on the Feldman property is a little over 84%. So it's similar in lot coverage to another nearby dealership. In terms of moving on to standards for design approval, the setbacks have all been complied with. The building itself complies with our height requirements for structures such as this. We have no concerns with meeting the dimensional requirements of the ordinance for the building itself. The building is comprised of 67% face brick, 7.3% paneling, and 10% doors, 15% glazing for windows. That's the northern facade that will be seen from Lion Center Drive. So ultimately, we need to have the Planning Commission, if they consider this, would also consider a waiver that, or either a waiver to this specific site or a modification to the design standards for Olive Lion Crossing. But ultimately, the architectural standards can be addressed in the plan development agreement documents that will be modified as part of this. I noted before, let's see. We did ask we did note that our preference for the overhead doors would be a lot of glazing and a lot of glass. If you recall, recently we reviewed a Jiffy Lube project where a lot of glass was required for the overhead doors, or desired for the overhead doors. These that are proposed are a little bit different than I've seen traditionally, but there is a lot of glass involved with those. So we'll leave it up to the Planning Commission to comment on those. In terms of vehicular circulation on the site, there was an auto turn analysis that was performed on the site, and you can see those outlines on this architectural site plan showing that a vehicle loader can traverse the site. And we understand that that particular vehicle is longer in length than the fire department's equipment. So we don't anticipate a problem, although we would require, or we'd request that the fire marshal comment on that specifically. There's 630 total spaces on the site. As mentioned before, all of the ordinance requirements for the use are complied with, so we have no concerns that there will be a deficiency in terms of the ordinance. In terms of signage, I do note that, again, the request is to have a monument sign out by the road. None of the facilities along Lion Center Drive, either west or east of Milford Road, have a monument sign, with the one exception being USA to Go, which is a couple properties to the east, a couple driveways to the east. That project required a variance to have that monument sign, and it's quite small. But we will want to note that the maximum sign, or the maximum height for any of our freestanding signs in the township, is 6 feet in height. So we would want to see the proposed sign modified to comply with that at a minimum. We've also been provided with, I mentioned, information about the Jeep Mountains, and for those that have not seen it, these are the designs for those structures. The construction details for these structures show that this taller one would be about 4 feet in height. The smaller one would be about 2 feet in height. So they are structures, pretty significant structures, but I think a cool feature that we could definitely work with and accommodate in the PD agreement. A photometric plan has been required. That was one thing that we noted as deficient. The photo plan shows that While there are a couple of locations on the property lines that are right at our maximum foot candle level of 0.5, they are compliant outside of the site itself. In our initial review, we had also noted that there were some landscape requirements that were deficient. Well, one really, and there was specifically the parking lot on the west border here did not have any landscaping that was proposed. So on the modified documents that were received last week, there's a significant evergreen tree screen as well as evergreen shrubs that are shown on the west side here. And the species along the north side of the property were spirea and other deciduous shrubs in the previous plan. Those have been updated to an evergreen shrub in compliance with our ordinance. Outside of that, I'm just going to summarize. I think the biggest things for clarification at this point relate to the location of the driveway, whether or not this driveway needs to be moved east slightly to align with the Tractor Supply Company drive, or whether another solution can be determined for right in, right out. The other being, we would like clarification on what exactly is proposed for the sidewalk. And we'd anticipate or hope that the network is continued from Milford Road all the way down to the roundabout. With that, I can conclude my report and I'll take any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian.
Can I chime in for a second here? This is David Gasson with Partners in Architecture, representing Zot Development.
Hi, David.
Zablocki is part of our team and she has lost connectivity. Could you let her back into the meeting?
Is the name Megan?
Megan, yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
no problem. She's coming into the meeting now.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Leslie, please.
Okay, I'd like to reference our April 28th review letter. Water mains in this area are adequately sized to support the proposed use. Sanitary sewer is available to serve the property. There is an existing sanitary sewer that would need to be abandoned, but it doesn't impact any other parcels. The stormwater detention has been evaluated. Again, this site was originally designed with a 10-year storm event requirement. The township standards are much stricter now. The site will have to be in compliance with our current standards, and it may impact Unit 4 of the PD. So that might need to be addressed in the formal PD amendment. And the discharge rate will have to meet the requirements of the new Hudson drain. In addition to that, the exact configuration of those utilities will be reviewed during detailed engineering review. And we do note that there are 3 wash bays proposed in the building according to the floor plans. And the township does have strict sodium and chloride limits in their groundwater discharge permit. We do have other uses in the township dealerships that have wash bays that are only for their service customers or their new sales. And I'm assuming it's the same for the Zot dealership as well, but we would like the applicant to comment on that. And as Brian mentioned, the traffic study did identify that the approach would either need to line up with Tractor Supply or have some modifications to Tractor Supply. And I think that concludes our comments at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you or the public have.
Okay, thank you. Want to start, Patty? Any questions?
No, I'll wait till the public hearing's done.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, same thing. Let's go through the public hearing.
Stefan? Okay, anyone else? Any comments?
Not
Okay,
at this time.
all right. Okay, all right. Okay, applicant, please step up.
Okay, I am audio and now video. David Gasson with Partners in Architecture. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be before you tonight. We're excited about sharing some new information. The team will be Megan Zablocki, I think she is now on, and Scott Sherman, Todd, Thad and Tom Zott, as well as Tony Anton, may chime in throughout the presentation. I just want to thank you again for accommodating us in this fashion so we can kind of move this forward, at least get your feedback and see if we can go to the next step. Appreciate Brian's report and Leslie's report, as well as the traffic study and the review of that. We'll comment on all of that in the course of our presentation. And I'll try not to repeat too much of what was already been reviewed in Brian's report to you, but some of it might be a duplication just to emphasize some of the things that we did and why. So Megan, if you're on board. Megan, I cannot hear you.
Yes, I'm mute.
Roll over the share.
Go. Perfect. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we could just move in, we're gonna kind of go down Lion Center Drive, coming from Milford Road, going southwest, just to give you an image of the building and the character and how the stature of it presents itself on the site. And we're kind of moving now kind of across the front of it, just past center of it, kind of moving towards the detention pond. That gives you a view of what the building as an overall passing by would present itself. This is an image with the drive where it is currently shown as you arrive. So this is your experience of at the dealership and how you as a customer would envision what you're going to go to. I'll touch real briefly on some of the materials, but I'm going to go to material board also. And Brian in his report tonight, as well as in his written report, covered a little bit. Megan, if you, go back, thank you. I'll just highlight a couple things. The character of the design obviously comes from FCA. There's a lot of branding that goes into keeping things similar across the board for their dealerships. What you'll notice is they kind of break down the facade into pieces so it's identifiable. And the predominant material they use is metal. And we talked about that briefly during concept design. In the ordinance requirements, we adapted and then kept somewhat of the color and texture, but in a masonry product. So mostly what you see there, about 60–70%, 67 to be precise, is a masonry product, highlighted with a couple of metal panel products, which primarily is the arch entryway, which is a metal panel. And then also the orange element, which is, it's called bamboo wood, but it's a metal product to simulate the look of wood. And sometimes the coloration on these kind of images are exaggerated a little bit. And I believe an actual sample of that was dropped off at the township. So possibly some of you have seen it. That's the material. It kind of adds to, call the attention to the brand there. And also mention another product across the front there is glass and doors. Makes up about 5% altogether. So if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of zoom in on a couple of the products. You can see the three main masonry elements, which is the two in the center and the one to the bottom left. Size are a little different, just again to draw some differentiation across the side, and the colors are obviously different, light, medium, and darker gray. The metal panel, the top left, is what really looked rather orange in the elevation, but it's a bamboo simulated wood grain look on the metal panel. To the right, two different metal panels. The one on the top is more of a high polished, kind of give it a little bit of an accent. And that's the canopy material and the trim material to really accentuate some elegance around the building. And the other part is an aluminum frame system for glazing. And then the other metal just below that is that arch gateway I talked about on the elevation. So those are some of the materials that we'll look to highlight and feature on the building. We'll go to the next slide for me, Megan. You hear me, Megan?
She appears to be frozen right now.
Oh, okay. Someone else on the team stand by with a alternative share file document that they can possibly try to interject?
Yeah, I can bring it up. Give me 1 second.
I'm not sure your file is going to be exactly as Megan's is, but we'll improvise where it's different. I'll try to just do a narrative.
Carl, who's winning the ball game?
Yeah.
I like your backdrop.
Thank you.
David, let me know. This is Todd. I can share your presentation if needed.
Okay, if you would do that, Todd, that'd be great, because I just got a message from Megan. She is booted out.
Okay, I'm bringing it up now.
Okay. Thank you, Todd.
You don't see it yet?
You are on the screen.
Okay, let's see. Where do you want to go?
Scroll one past the material board. The next one. Okay, perfect. That's great, Todd. Thank you. So this just highlights a couple of the other elements, zooming in from the facade, really giving you a little bit better view of that bamboo metal panel right at the Jeep entry, and also the polished metal canopy directly above it. And the arch entryway, which is a silver metallic metal. So it's really meant to accentuate the elevation, add some flair to it, and really kind of conform to what FCA is requiring in their dealerships. You can go to the next slide, please. Here, just drawing your attention to where those three different bricks are used. You can see the backdrop at the archway entry is a light gray, and the darker gray that surrounds the body of the building in the service area is the darker gray. The middle gray, which is as brick as well, is on the potential back, added addition in the back area, and also used as part of the veneer to the trash enclosure. And we'll touch on that a little bit more when we get to the site plan. It gives you an idea how the different masonry products are used throughout the building, trying to, again, kind of separate the facade and break it up a little bit. Go to the next slide, please. This really is to show you the door. So it's a glass product. I think it adds some elegance to and adds to the character of the rest of the building. It's rather sleek looking, and it gives you a really good transparency into the work area. And it also makes a rather nice facade material when you're viewing it from the front. It doesn't look like a industrial garage door at all. It actually is very elegant looking, in my opinion. Next slide, please. Megan, are you on board to go through the description here, or shall I take on that? So here are the Rockscape and the Jeep Mountain and Hill. As Brian mentioned, these are products, so these are delivered as purchased items. They are structural in that. Wow.
Megan is on the line now.
Okay, Megan, do you want to jump in? Is that why I was echoing?
No, I think just keep going.
Okay.
Sorry.
So they're delivered products. They're structural in the nature that they support the vehicle, but there is a foundation pad, smaller than the item, placed on the ground that they're placed on. And they are permanently located. They're not something that would move around the site. So once they're situated, and as Brian mentioned, we work together on the final details of that. They would stay in that position. They are illuminated. So under the body of the vehicle, you won't see the light source, but it illuminates the undercarriage just to give it some interest visually, as well as there's some floodlights highlighting the overall element combined as the vehicle and the mountain itself. They're rather interesting, and actually I think they're rather visually appealing when you see them. Next slide, please. Here's just a couple more examples. We're trying to show you how they're illuminated, and to the right you can see the light source underneath it, so you wouldn't actually you would just see illumination under the vehicle, and somewhat depicting how it would be onto the vehicle on that upper right. Next slide, please. Signage, I did hear exactly what Brian was talking about in terms of this would be a amendment to the PD or a waiver of some sort. When we looked at the requirement by FCA in signage, they have a lot of signage. We look to select the absolute smallest product that they would approve, because they're the other side of this approval process, for us anyway. So we selected the smallest possible sign within their choices. The sign itself, the sign face, is 6'4", and I know Brian mentioned 6 feet. And if there were a way for us to make that smaller, we would definitely do that. I think the overall presence of it at 8 foot, we can work with some grading and some landscape to create the visual presence of it a lot closer to 6 feet. But I'm not exactly sure how we'll do that. I'll just kind of end that topic as we will do everything we can to work with the township to make this amendment satisfactory to you, but we do kind of need to work within the confines of what the FCA provides for us in terms of signage. Next slide, please. So the site plan, and this is very similar to what you last saw when we proposed moving it to the center, and part of the discussion then was to move it up closer even to the road, to kind of show off the building a little bit. So we were able to do that subtly, but did move forward, maintain the circulation, vehicle circulation, and safety first responder vehicle pathways that are going to be required. And the footprint of the inventory vehicles, guest vehicles, service, and employees pretty much stayed the same. There was some tweaking. So this is basically what you've seen before. And Brian covered a lot of the aspects of the site design as a whole, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of that. But one thing that was in the report, I'll just mention, I did kind of allude to it earlier, and that's the face brick cover on the trash enclosure. That was something that needed to be identified. So that darker gray will be the enclosure veneer to the structural masonry backup that will be the actual enclosure. And we'll have gates, obviously, as described there. The other element of the trash was how do we work as good neighbors and in concert with events that might be activities at the cemetery. And obviously we have to work with the trash provider and the vendor, but the owner commits to doing whatever they can to coordinate and find a rhythm for how that works, assuming that activity is happening in a rather routine window of, I don't know, 9 to 2 or something, and try to work with their vendor to accommodate picking up outside of that window. So we would do everything we could in that regard to be a good neighbor for that. A couple other things I wanted to talk on here is coverage. It was mentioned that we're asking for an amendment of up to 75%, and we're just under 72% as it stands right now. We were able to reduce that from our last plan by increasing the green area and landscape is the methodology in which we did that. And to reach those percentages, we considered the detention pond as our overall area and the way the building presents itself. And I think part of what Brian mentioned was that if this were commercial use, it would be a lot greater coverage than what we're showing. So I think in the spirit of things, asking for the amendment at 75%, being slightly under 72%, I think we've worked out a win-win scenario for coverage. Photometrics, Brian mentioned that we did get something township and generally compliant, meet the needs for the ordinance in terms of what goes over the property line. The next thing I'm going to cover is pedestrian movement. I'm going to move a little bit also into a response or conversation about the traffic study that we had done, as well as the review of that traffic study. But I'm going to segue into that with the pedestrian movement of the site. And previous plans and meetings, that was a pretty robust conversation about the greenway, the sidewalk, and movement to and from the dealership to the sidewalks and so forth. And the other element was crossings. How do we cross Line Center Drive? And that was covered in traffic report as well as its review. I heard a very good discussion, and I think a resultant collaborative approach. It sounds like that we'd be willing to participate, obviously, in trying to find that solution in terms of connectivity. And what we're showing right now, which is different than the plan that was submitted, but on the revised plan submitted on Friday, we're showing sidewalk across the property frontage. And we extended that down the cross in front of the detention all the way to the existing curb cut, right where that cursor is now. So obviously the other portions that we talked about, we would be in that conversation to make a solution to come back to you in the final review with an acceptable approach comprehensively. So the association, Watermark, and other tenants, so to speak, within this development would participate in that solution. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll kind of elaborate on a couple of thoughts on this. This is a graphic from I think it was the 2008 master plan, and maybe you recognize it, but I'll go to the next slide where we slightly modify it. And you can see more clearly the black dotted is, it's not constructed, but that's what your master plan showed as a potential location of a greenway. And our portion is just that little section between the curvy dark line and the cemetery, right there. But also illustrated here is what you just saw Watermark propose on their easterly property at Tractor Supply going up to the park. They would connect onto Lions Center in the circle. And I'm going to go a roundabout way to get to my point here. But in our previous plan and the one we recently submitted, we committed to an easement along the property for a future greenway, which would be accomplished when the outlots for the restaurants were done. So we can kind of collaborate with them also in the process. But through the review of the traffic study and the content of it, I think it was a rather consensus that a mid-block crossing on Lion Drive wasn't appropriate based on functionality and safety. So our proposal that we submitted on Friday as an update to those conversations last week is that we enhance, and we, as Brian alluded to, enhance the greenway or the sidewalk on Grand River as the greenway that would now begin to make sense with what Watermark is proposing and can do logically. And I think it'll be an immediate thing for your residents want to see and be able to start using. And I kind of agree with what Brian said. It doesn't make a lot of sense to put it on the property edge on the south side of the Zot. However, we did maintain that 20-foot greenway there, I'll call it a green belt, not a greenway, but there is that property there dedicated to green. It's just not the pathway that we would suggest. So if you go to the next slide, that indicates what we're suggesting. So you would see the new pathway all along Lion Center Drive on both sides, all the way back to Milford Road, down to the roundabout, and then down Grand River. So that's kind of us projecting an opinion on your vision based on these two developments. But I think the spirit of what I'd like to say is based on what was just discussed with Watermark. I think we all come together, the entities involved, Watermark, Join, and other property tenants there, and we come up with the big picture solution. And I think here is a logical way for us to say, yeah, we hear what you want, and we're going to work to make sure that we come back at final with something that you'll be happy with. Go to the next slide, please. So we're back at the plan, which is basically the plan we just looked at a minute ago. I just want to kind of emphasize here a couple of things. The overall process for us was to look at this property and the givens, the existing, and we design process using that existing drive that was, or curb cut off of Lion Circle Drive, or the drive there. And all of our studies have included that. And I guess our reasoning was it's already been approved initially, and then it was approved possibly, or at least discussed when Tractor Supply went in. So it had some acceptance is what we were thinking. It worked rather well for our, it worked extremely well for our design. But hearing from the professionals last week and the considerations that they wanted us to at least listen to and work through, they talked about access management, offset or positive offset in terms of drives, and kind of boiling down that conversation of what they called recommendations or suggestions of offsetting or positive offsets of drive. We, I think, came to the conclusion that the position of the proposed watermark drive and the existing drive into the Zott development property, roughly 180 feet separation, is appropriate for an offset, as a positive offset. The challenge was with the roughly 45 feet to the two I just mentioned that were previously approved, the Tractor Supply and the existing one. So our approach was, we really want to see it to stay there as a presentation to the building when you're arriving as a customer. Really is impressive to see the building in that front on position. And our approach is to talk with Tractor Supply and say, there is a potential conflict or issue that we need to address to satisfy some concerns that have been raised. And we've reached out to them. We don't have an answer, but we want you to consider that we think this drive location as it is works really well for this development, and that we're earnestly making an effort to work with the Tractor Supply and to use the words that are in the traffic study as well as the review of the traffic study. It's to create a access management plan. And that's access management for us was, as it was kind of stated in Brian's report, was a right in, right out, or some kind of methodology that we manage that existing at Tractor Supply as well as ours to eliminate conflicts. And just to further kind of emphasize that we kind of looked at other situations, and we see this commonly throughout two-way roads with a center turn lane, and a couple examples are right on Grand River. There are many of them east of Milford Road, and a couple public streets as well as business drives to the west. So I'm saying that only to say it does work, and it doesn't mean it's not a concern, but our wish and our request as we've submitted this is that you consider that we keep it where it is because it works well for the development in the presentation of the building, and that we're working with Tractor Supply to develop an access management approach that will work for you, that we can illustrate with a lot more certainty when we come back at final, if we're allowed to continue down this development path as where it is. So that's our ask for you tonight. And be happy to answer any questions or go back and review anything in particulars, whether it be in the traffic study. I know Julie's still on the line. Perhaps she can speak to some of those points. But I think we're excited about where we are right now. We're hopeful to keep momentum moving forward and be able to be, I guess, smart in the way we do things and open certainly to ideas and concerns and a way to make everybody involved happy.
All right. Thanks, David. You used up your 20 minutes, but is there anyone else that was speaking from Zott?
I think the presentation is done. If the Zott family has a comment, they chime in.
I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted? Can you guys hear me? This is Thad Zott. Yes.
I did. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for the 20 minutes, and I'll be brief. But Obviously very encouraging working with the township and you all for your flexibility. Obviously, to echo the Watermark, comments, certainly we're in unprecedented times, and who would have thought, a couple meetings ago, we'd be sitting here in front of our computers at our houses, working on the next moves. So I really do, hats off to you. We've made many comments behind the scenes of how forward thinking the township is. Frankly, I'd like you guys to maybe converse with Chrysler a little bit, because I think you're a step ahead of even the manufacturer right now when it comes to, evolving and adapting to today's concerns. We've had some struggles with them not being able to adapt. So again, kind of hats off to you. And thank you for everybody for adapting to the climate. I guess the only other real quick comment I had was regarding the wash bays. And there's, the wash bays are strictly going to be utilized for customer cars in service department, and certainly just for, cleaning up new cars for delivery. So it's not like it's going to be an open opportunity for the public to come in and utilize car washes or anything like that. So it's strictly for our customers and for new car deliveries. So I just wanted to clarify that before we moved on.
All right. Thank you, Thad.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, let's hold our questions. Let's open up the public hearing. Anyone out there? We're going to open up the public hearing now. What was it, Ken? Star 9, you said?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Star 9 will alert us that they would like to speak. And once we see that we're notified, we will unmute their telephone line. So Star 9 on your keypad will alert us.
Okay.
I do see a hand now. Phone number, last 4 digits, 5526. I will unmute your line now. Feel free
Hi,
to.
this is Deanna.
Yes, feel free to provide your name and address, please.
Deanna Cunningham, 305 Fuller, Golden Valley. Again,
Okay.
A dealership is a concern for me from 2 standpoints: the lighting, the light pollution. We've had a lot of that with just some of the other groups that have come in, the Walmarts, the Lowe's, the whatever. Obviously, with the Walmart apartment or the residential thing, that might block some of it. However, still, I did not move into a very rural community to have the light pollution that we're going to experience, especially with the dealership. So that is a huge concern from that standpoint. And then also the outside audio, because there's always speakers with dealerships calling for, specific things. And that also would be a very unpleasant welcome thing for not just myself, but also even the residential development that we're proposing to go in as well. So those would be my main 2 concerns with this, that and obviously the traffic that's already being looked at.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Would you like me to address any of that, or?
Well, let's wait. Yeah, let's wait till we hear if there's anyone else, then we'll go through the list.
Mr. Chairman, I'm scrolling through the list now, looking for additional virtual hands to be raised. Again, Star 9 from any of the callers if you'd like to speak.
Motion to close the public hearing if there's nobody else.
Support.
Ken, anyone else?
I see no other virtual hands raised at this point.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Thank you. Yes, Todd, would you address the lights and audio, please?
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Thad Zott. It happens all the
okay,
time with
sorry.
me and Todd. It happens all the time with me and Todd, so no worries. But I mean, obviously a very, understandable concern from a neighbor. And I think that, with the evolution of dealerships and technology, I wouldn't expect, the general public to understand the changes that have happened in the market. The biggest is, with the LED technology, how you can manage the lighting is unbelievable when it comes to property lines. You literally can dial the light in to where it's 0 at the property line and does not bleed over. In addition to that, we have, the technology where you basically dim the lights at certain times of the evening and when we close, so they're not blaring all night long. Certainly, if we have issues with theft or something like that, we can adapt some of that lighting to where a motion detection can come in place, and particularly maybe shine on that particular area. Maybe even at a lower wattage than normal, just to kind of spook the person away, and then eventually we'll go back off. So the technology has changed dramatically, really because of a lot of concerns that other dealers and other communities have faced. And, there's other boards that look at the same issues their citizens have. So the technology has come a tremendously long way when it comes to lighting. So it really is down to a minimal. As far as the speaker systems go, again, that's age technology. None of our dealerships in White Lake, Highland, Holly, or Waterford utilize any type of outdoor announcement speakers that someone has a call or somebody needs to be on the showroom. Everything now is done via text. When a customer walks in and we have a salesperson that's on the lot, they just receive a text that says that you have somebody here to see you. There's no big blaring, announcement going across the outside channels for, to disrupt the neighborhoods anymore. So all of that has evolved as, again, concerns from citizens have arisen at other dealerships, and certainly at ours as well, that we currently have, and technology has changed to allow us to be able to do that. So I hope that answers a couple of the concerns and that clarifies that a bit.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Thad. Patricia, start us off.
Thank you. Thad, what are your hours of operation? Like what would your dealership be opened?
In the old world or the new world?
Well, what we thought was the old world, I don't know, that might all change, but I mean.
I know. Well, we're currently open 9 to 5 Monday through Friday in the current world. Where do we see that going? More than likely, it's going to be more of a traditional hours again, going back to 9 to 6 on like a Monday. On a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday would be like a 9 to 6. However, service department usually opens early at 7:30 to accommodate drop-offs as well. So the fixed operations, meaning collision, parts, and service, will be there at 7:30. And then our later evening hours would be Monday and Thursday till 9 p.m. And then Saturday hours, we've been running 10 to 3. However, right now we're not running any Saturday hours. So we do hope that things, progress where we get back to those more traditional hours. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, well, it did, because depending on, like Deanna asked about, the lights. So typically, if you're in the summer, it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock. So you're already going to be closed and minimal lights at that time. And that's what I was referring to. Winter a little different, winter, maybe you get, you get close to 5 o'clock and it gets dark. So you really won't be open much past that. So that was my direct question.
Sure.
Okay. So, I really love the building. I just love it. I think it's just beautiful, and I can't wait to drive by it. I think it's just going to be a great addition.
We're proud of it. I think.
Yeah, I bet. I can actually imagine. I like all the different brick and the wood, which does look yellow, but the wood grain
accent. Yeah, the accent. I mean, it's tough because we want to make you happy and we want to make Chrysler happy. So we're kind of in this tug of war, right? Where they don't want everything brick. They want everything metal. That's what their brand image is. That's what every dealership across the country is. So, we have to push them to come your way. And then, with some of the accents, we hope that you come their way a bit and we get everybody happy. And I think the end result is beautiful. I like it better than the original image. So
yeah, it looks nice. They did a good job. They really did.
Yeah.
So I love the glass doors, and I know, I noticed that right away in the print, that every glass. I really do like it. It looks very clean. It's going to make it for a happy interior for your employees and the people that work there. I like it. I think it's sharp. I agree with our consultants about the green belt. I thought that was kind of odd, and I thought about it for a while, but I think what's more important for, in my opinion, is the pathway, is the walkway, the sidewalk. I think it's very important to move the pedestrians and make them safe. So I'm okay with not having the green belt. And again, that's my opinion. I think the rock scapes are very clever. And I think if you were a young kid or maybe thinking about, you know, it's kind of cool for a boy or a guy or a girl to they like the Jeep thing. And so to see that, I think that would be okay. I think that would be attractive. I don't know how, and I trust Tony that you guys are going to figure out how to get the pathway where it needs to go and the crossing. So I hope you guys will work on that and bring that back in the final.
We want to be a good partner, and certainly, you know, I think you heard Tony's inflection that he's genuinely going to make sure it happens. So we'll be part of that solution.
Always been good to his word, so
Yeah.
I like that. I don't know how do we fix the entrance. You know, by Tractor Supply, I guess. I don't know. Is that up to us or is that up to the? I don't know if that's up to the road commission. I'm not sure what say we have in that. So I don't know what to comment on that because I'm not sure where.
We took it as a recommendation and really analyzed it and really analyzed a lot of other businesses in the area, really analyzed our current businesses that are on M59 that have very similar distance issues, that are traveling at a much higher speed with way more traffic, that, you know, it's not an issue. So I think maybe sometimes we overthink and we got to make it take a step back. I don't want to say, you know, common sense comes into play because I don't want anybody to get take it wrong, but I think when you really take a step back and look at how the flow of other businesses happen around all over Metro Detroit, and there's a middle lane, and now the traffic count is way down from what we thought it was going to be, I think it's less of an issue than everybody thinks it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that'll get figured out. And then my last thing is I absolutely believe you about technology because I told you I just got a new Jeep and they texted me everything. I mean, everything came by text. It's quite amazing. So I think that you answered Deanna's questions, which I believe to be true. And those are all my comments. So,
thank you.
You bet.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Patty. Mr. Chalk.
Yeah, I echo pretty much the same sentiments, so I won't go into it. I do like the glass doors, and actually kind of forces the initial setup for the service to keep it clean and neat and orderly, and that's what the customer sees. So that's a good thing for everybody. Real quick though, that driveway, and Brian, I don't know if you can answer this, or how far would it need to go east, in your opinion? Brian, you on?
I believe the number was about 45 feet.
To line up exactly, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we're not talking about significant distances to change, but enough where you got to change the existing curb cut, make it inconvenient and expensive. There's no doubt about that.
Well, the curb cut could be handled, but I understand the presence of pulling in and the positioning of that curb cut. If that curb cut wasn't there, you know, it is there, obviously. They would have to put one in, but, you know, that's a tough one. I tend to agree. I think, you know, the left-hand turns, the right-hand turns can be monitored. I think, you know, people have to pay attention. The traffic is not coming 55 miles an hour. I mean, if Tractor Supply wants to work something out, I think that's fabulous. But if I'm sitting there at Tractor Supply, I'm probably not going to want a right hand. Kind of hampers my business. So, but if you guys can work it out, that's great. Real quick, yeah, I talked about the glass. You know, and Brian, if I caught this correctly, I realized Fiat Chrysler has different standards. The smallest sign that I saw was 52 square feet. Is that correct? Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah,
I think it was 8 by 6.4. Or
I'll try to bring it up.
Well, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, that was the number.
Yeah, you're gonna have to bring it up. My point is this, yeah.
52 square feet.
Yeah, well, I think our ordinance calls for 48 square feet, so I guess, Brian, they would still need a variance, correct? Because that's about 8% difference, a little over 8%.
No, how we would treat it in the instance of the plan development is we would modify the sign standards.
Okay.
Call out the site specifically. And ultimately, we don't want a decision made by you and the township board to be sent to the ZBA anyways. So whatever you and the board decide in terms of whether or not it's appropriate, that will stand.
No, that's fine because there was reference made to the USA to go gas, and times have changed, and I'm glad that it can be worked out, and that's why I asked the question. Other than that, I think it's great. Once again, it's a piece of property that has sat there. It's going to be an asset to our community in many ways. So I like the whole project. That's it.
All right. Thank you, James. I had a question for either, I guess, Thad or David. Can you talk a little bit about the signage in the parking lot? I've been at your location on M59 several times, and finding a parking spot can be a challenge. Most of the spots along the front are used cars that they were either previously owned or leased cars. Do you have specific spots or signs for customers?
Just to clarify, we have 3 dealerships on M59, so I'm not sure which dealership you're referring to.
Well, it would be the Jeep, the one on the south side of M59. Is that White Lake?
Yeah, White Lake. Okay. We do have designated customer spots.
Very few. Is that something you'll look at?
Oh, for sure. We want to make sure that there's adequate customer parking. So yeah, if you have a concern about that and we need to make more of the spots customer parking, we're going to be flexible. We want to have as many parking spots as we can for inventory, and we want to have as many, spots comfortable for consumers as well. So, dealerships are a funny thing. There's cars moving nonstop, right? It's test drives and quick oil changes, and so cars are coming and going really quick. So it seems to be a concern at a lot of dealerships, but certainly we want to make sure we have enough customer parking.
This is David Gasson chiming in. The layout currently is we have customer parking surrounding the building. So immediately coming in and turning right or left, there's going to be 37 spaces adjacent to the building that are assigned as customer parking on the west side, and there's 27 spaces on the first aisle to the east, giving most convenience, and not just convenience for that fact, but it's when you drive in, you want to know where to go. So there's going to be an obvious place, so to minimize traffic movement and chaos of getting in and getting situated. Overall,
Is it signed on the asphalt, or is it actual signs?
It's actual signs, and I don't think it's every single space. And it's identified on the plan for planning purposes, but there's signage in the parking lot.
Okay.
But not for every space like you come to expect for barrier free, where every space is signed. That's not the case.
What about the the haulers? How common is it going to be for those trucks to be parking on the street before they get into your location? Is that a common occurrence at other locations?
I'll let Thad do an operational answer. From a planning perspective, we've included a design that accommodates interior storage and movement, so it doesn't need to be on a public street. Operationally, I know that changes for a lot of reasons, but maybe Thad, you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I love that entrance where it's at is the flow for trucks. It's very easy for them to turn in and go around the building and go back out. And we want to make sure we have an easy pathway for them. That's a key at a dealership. The flow has to be easy for them not to stop in the street and start unloading, because it's always a temptation for them to do that. In every town we've had a dealership in, so we have to make sure that the flow is very friendly, and that current entrance, and you can see the pathway, is extremely friendly for trucks to pull in and have space to unload and pull back out. So I'm hoping we can maintain that same entrance.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
I can't reiterate everything that's said. I love the building. I think this works really well. I'm wondering about that entrance to the Tractor Supply. And if most traffic is coming in from the east, I'm just wondering why we couldn't put like a no left turn into Tractor Supply going from the west, coming from the west. I don't know. Just it seems like that entrance needs to be in the center of the building to give it the effect it needs. If it were to the side, all the way pushed over, it would almost look like a side entrance. But yeah. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But other than that, I think I really like the building. I like the materials. It's just a sharp building. It's a great attraction. You got beautiful apartments on one side, and you have this beautiful dealership on the other. And light pollution, like Dad said, it's pretty much a non-issue. The light is so well defined and scrutinized by everyone in the city with photometrics. So I don't have really any issues. And I know everyone uses their cell phones now. The PA systems are a thing of the past. So I don't have any problems, except maybe like that entrance that wants to be lined up, but maybe just can't. So we'll have to resolve that if anything. But that's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Pennington.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what my other colleagues said. I really like the project. I like the look of the building. I appreciate the nicer material on it, and the glass doors look good to me. So I'm all for it.
All right, very good. Kurt Radke.
I like everything I heard from my colleagues. I agree. I just have a question. When the drive that's proposed on the screen right now, if the car comes in the middle of that drive, it catches about a third of the 30% of the building coming from the east, right? So the drive by Tractor Supply, which is a little farther east, would catch the east edge of that front of the building, almost where those bays are, the service bays. But there's another drive, if you go the Watermark project, if you come out of their drive on the north side, you catch 30% of the front of the building. If you come in that way, is that an option? You're actually gonna catch the part of the building that sticks out there. If you follow me, Mike, if you look at Leslie's email that she sent, it's in blue, the Watermark North. When they moved the boulevard from the South Drive Watermark entrance, they didn't touch the entrance on the north side of Watermark property, right?
Correct.
So if the driveway for Zot would match that, if you drew a line from the center of what's blue on the email from Leslie, that drive-in would catch about 30% from the west side of the Zot building. It would have that same impact. If you follow me?
Yeah, I do.
So they still get, the entrance. In fact, isn't that side of the building even more attractive than the side with the service bays? Just a thought.
This is David Gasson. Is it okay for me just to chime in?
Yeah, please.
We did look at alternatives after the discussion with the traffic engineers, and that was obviously one of the things of discussion. And as a download afterwards, that positions the entry somewhat after you're passing the building, with the predominant approach being from the Milford Road roundabout. That felt like we were passing by. That was somewhat of an issue for us in terms of redesigning it for that reason. And you're also making a turn when you're really in this kind of the throat of a curve, which we thought presented another type of traffic vehicle movement issue altogether. Where it is now, you're pretty much in the straightway of that drive, and the ease or the comfort of some drivers to make a left-hand turn in a straightway versus curve is a little more comforting. That was our thoughts behind that consideration, and really felt like where it is, it really presents the building best, is you're seeing it when you make the turn onto Line Drive, and you're kind of approaching the existing drive in the right kind of way. But we did look at that. We definitely did look at that.
Okay, those are my only comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Yeah. Yes. It's good. Good thoughts. Thank you. Carl.
Yes. Since we're on the subject of the driveway, the curb cut, that was approved when it was put in by, I would assume, the road commission. So I think they're going to have the final say so. And it is a stumbling block for this project because, as we all know, if we approve this plan tonight and it changes, they have to come back. So it makes it really difficult unless the applicant is willing to say, well, we'll just have to come back. I think that they meet all the criteria tonight, and I want to move it forward. But again, with this curb cut that was originally approved, if it changes, they got to come back. Anytime that's done, I would think Brian would concur with that. Is that right, Brian?
Well, they're going to have to come, I mean, as a PD, it still has to go to the board and would come back to you for final review. So I guess the question is, we've beat the horse a little bit. We know what the issues are. And if you're comfortable that they can either use it or they need to modify the location of that drive a bit, then you'd be in a position to move it forward. Does that make sense?
Okay. Because yeah, it makes sense to me. And I'm also a firm believer. I don't see any reason why this planning commission, by what they said tonight, isn't willing to give a waiver on the design standard for the PD, which would allow the glass doors, which everybody loves, the metal panels, for example. If we can make all that happen and everybody's in agreement, I think that we'd be willing to move that forward. But with that said, I got one last question for Leslie on the car wash side. Leslie, in those final plans, does there have to be interceptors or anything special for that wash bay?
No, I mean, we might request like a monitoring manhole or something like that. We just wanted to confirm that it wasn't going to be a high use type of car wash. The applicant still has to comply with the sodium and chloride limits. If for some reason the township's out of compliance with their wastewater treatment plant permit, then we actually will have to go and test, but we've been in a good position for the last several years. So I don't anticipate it. I just wanted to ask the question because when we saw 3 in the past, typically for other dealerships, we've seen 1. So we just wanted to clarify that it was just for this use.
Okay, thank you. So, and we agree that the sidewalk's going in all the way on Line Center Drive, and they're going to work diligently to solve some of the traffic issues on Milford Road and the roundabout. So, and I love the answers that everybody's given tonight. Thad had some great comments on the LED lighting and addressing the noise outside. So I myself am totally ready to move this project forward to the board. I digress.
All right. Carl, very good. Sounds like you're entertaining a motion. Any other comments?
Carl.
Mr. Chair, Lisa Anderson, I just had
Yes, Lisa.
one quick question. I think it's worth making sure that Kajoyan, that being known, saw the comment in the CES memo about Unit 4 and the impact that temporary basin, which would then become a permanent basin, would have on Unit 4, essentially making it unbuildable in the future. I just want to make sure that Kajoyan saw that in the CS memo and is aware of it.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So my understanding is that, as we did in a previous amendment to the PUD, where we were going to be allowed to shrink that eastern pond, that we are no longer allowed to do that because of the times that have changed. We've gone from a 10-year storm to a 100-year storm, which, you know, if that's the township's decision, that's okay, but we probably lose an outlot, which is sad because the ponds on the other side of the street don't get anywhere near the usage. I could cut those in half and we'd be just fine. But that's up to the township. I saw it. I understand it. I'm not happy about it. I don't think it's practical, but if that's the standard that we will have to follow, then we'll leave that pond as is.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, anything else?
No, that's all. I
No?
just wanted to make
Okay.
sure that he
Okay.
saw that comment.
Okay, understand. Thank you. All right, any other comments or entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that AP-19-50 be moved forward for approval. Do we need that contingent language on the driveway, the curb cut? Or we just leave that alone, Brian?
I think you're probably, we should have that in the motion that, you know, if a resolution can't be determined to the satisfaction of the traffic consultants, that may need to be moved.
Okay, I'll go along with that. I think you got that, Kelly?
I do.
Based on the McKenna letter as well as the CES letter. I don't have the dates in front of me, but Kelly, if you have them.
Got it.
That is my motion.
I support.
Motion, who supported?
Me.
Mr. H, okay. Motion and support, any other comments? No comments, okay. Kelly, if you take roll.
Sure. Patricia Carcone,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Ron Pennington,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Carl Tom.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who's that, Elvis? I like Elvis.
Kids, he's got to put him to bed. Go ahead. Mike.
Okay, new business, AP 2014. Signed zoning ordinance text amendment. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been diligently at work, myself and Lisa's team and Carol. We've been going through the process to amend the sign ordinance in light of well, not so recent anymore, a court decision called Gilbert versus Reed regarding the content of signage and how we are not supposed to or should not be regulating signs based on having to read the sign. So that is the gist of our review. What we've done to date is go through and amend our current language to get rid of any content-based regulations. And these are things like a typical example would be a political sign. A lot of sign ordinances, lines included, will define a political sign. However, we should be treating those the way that we're treating them in this example is we're calling those yard signs. So, you know, what you would typically see as a little wireframe sign that you stick in your yard, whether it says vote for Patty or whether it says I like hot dogs, whatever you want that sign to say, we should be treating them the exact same. A yard sign is a yard sign is a yard sign. You don't have to read it to know that it's a yard sign for that example. So those are the kinds of things that we've gone through, and we've tried to simplify and reduce our current ordinance to get rid of things like that. We've taken a shot at better defining signage based on the physical characteristics of the sign. You know, when we're talking about a billboard, we're not saying that we're not necessarily saying that it's for advertisement along a freeway, but we are saying that it's a sign that stands free. It's large. It's typically to be read from long distances, things like that. So we're trying to do a better job of just defining the sign's physical characteristics. The draft that we have in front of you really is not intended to change the dimensional requirements of the ordinance as it sits today. So as we were talking about the height of freestanding signs before, where it sits at 6 feet in the ordinance today, it would be 6 feet in the draft ordinance. We're doing that because we don't necessarily see size as a barrier to installing a sign in most cases. We do get occasional variance requests for signage, but not often. And so we think the dimensional and placement standards are working pretty well for us. So this is really relating to, let's make this thing, let's get rid of content-based regulations. Let's make it a bit easier to read while we're in there and simplify where possible. Another example of simplification would be today in the ordinance, our New Hudson signs for the New Hudson district are not found in our sign ordinance. The regulations are not. They're found in the New Hudson district regulations. And so with this change, we would be bringing every sign regulation that we have into one chapter, so they're easy to find. Again, minimizing any confusion that we can have from a developer, from a resident, from the planning commission, from our zoning administration staff, so on and so forth. We have made a few distinctions. If you look through the draft that you have in front of you, starting on page 15, our zoning district regulations. And what we're doing here is we're saying that we've really got 6 kind of categories of signs that we're defining. We have permanent and temporary sign regulations for our residential districts, permanent and temporary for our commercial and industrial districts, and permanent and temporary for our New Hudson and our mixed use districts. So that's what those tables are that start on page 15. And you can see we've kind of simplified down the types of signs that you are permitted to do. In terms of a permanent sign for residential districts, we're saying you really don't have an opportunity for a permanent wall sign if you're a single family home, if not in a subdivision, if you're a duplex, triplex, quadplex. We wouldn't expect you to have a monument sign or an entranceway sign. But we do make some allowances for subdivisions to have those signs, potentially non-residential uses. For instance, if a church is located in the R10 district, they may want a monument sign, so we're providing for that. In terms of temporary signage, it's the same thing. We're trying to simplify those as much as possible. Again, we really haven't made a lot of regulatory changes that we're suggesting through here. We can go into detail at a future meeting because this will need a public hearing on what those changes are, but really I'm just trying to familiarize you with the organization here. So in a similar manner, the commercial signs, you have a few more options. You've got monument signs and entranceway signs, but you could also have billboards in select locations, wall signs in select locations, so on and so forth. So I won't go through all of those, but again, as you're reading through this, keep in mind that we're trying to get rid of as much content-based regulation as we can get.
Brian.
Yes, sir.
Can you bring examples or photos next time, like when we address this, of some of these?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely do that. What I'd like to do, and if I don't anticipate a lot of detailed questions right now, but what I'd like to do is right now we do anticipate having another meeting for the Planning Commission later this month, probably digitally again. I can have those prepared. We can work through some of the details of the ordinance if you have questions or clarifications. And then there is a bit of urgency in moving at least a portion of these regulations along. Right now there's a moratorium on billboard applications in the township. So we're not permitted to process any request for a billboard given a township board's moratorium. So we are correcting a couple numeric-based standards for billboards that we need to address. We have a few applicants that are chomping at the bit and waiting for the township to take some action on the sign ordinance. So if you're comfortable with it, I guess at this point we would anticipate that we may hold a public hearing, or I'd like to try to hold a public hearing at the first meeting of June. That gives us a good chunk of the second meeting this month to talk about sign standards, for this draft in specific. And then we could bring back any revisions or comments that you have to the public hearing in June, if that sounds like a reasonable schedule.
Sounds like a good plan. Yep.
Okay.
Liz, do you have anything to add?
No.
No, I think you did a good job, Brian, summarizing it. It's really, like he said, in response to that Supreme Court case that we're just trying to eliminate the content. So Brian did a great job walking through that.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So do we need to make a motion for a public hearing?
No.
No, okay. All right.
Could I ask you guys if I could take a picture of our screen?
No.
Okay with that?
No.
My nose looks huge.
Hold on. I'm gonna take a picture of the
Mine is
screen.
bigger.
Okay, done. I didn't take a screenshot, but I took one on my phone.
I would have put a tie on, Carl. I wish you would have.
So if somebody wants to take a screenshot, you have my permission.
You can't hardly see Mike
Okay.
though.
Oh, sorry. I gotta lower my, all right, where are we at here? Anything else, Brian?
That's all I have on that item.
Okay, all right. Patty, what do you have for us?
I have nothing because we haven't had a board meeting.
Uh-huh.
Board meeting in May, so. hopefully-
So we're gonna have another meeting in 2 weeks, correct?
It sounds like.
I think, did
was
Brian,
it-
we had stuff, right?
Yeah, we've got a site plan and we'll have this, and potentially we can introduce some other ordinance amendments. We've been at work cleaning things up during our break from the office. So, but we do need to hold that. The next scheduled date though is the 25th, which is Memorial Day. So typically we move those meetings to the day after, which is the 26th.
26th. Is that good for everybody?
Absolutely.
That, unfortunately, that is not good for me. This is Ken Milburn from Merge Live. I apologize.
We need him.
Can we move it to the 27th or do we have to post it or what?
I'm good on the 27th. The
I just
28th,
don't know what
I'm
we have
not.
to do from a standpoint of letting the public.
We don't have any public hearing notices that need to go out that would have published a date. So you've got, really, you can change that meeting date if you have to.
I mean, I could do Wednesday or Tuesday, but sounds like Tuesday's out of the question. So Wednesday I could do.
Wednesday, everyone? Kelly?
Wednesday
Yeah,
works.
Wednesday's fine.
All right.
Send out a
That's it.
reminder.
Yeah. Planning Commission.
Is that the
okay.
27th? Wednesday, the 27th or 28th?
27th, I believe.
27. All right.
We'll confirm
Cool.
with the rest of the staff that there's no other meeting conflicts. I don't think there is, but
Okay. All right. That went pretty smooth.
I thought we all did a
Yeah.
good job. Congrats,
It
Mike.
Good job, everyone. Well, everybody here. Thanks, Ken. You were very helpful.
I'd make a
No
motion,
problem. You guys, you rocked it like pros yourself. So yeah, great job,
Guys did
everybody.
good.
I'd make a motion to close.
Support. Let's just say, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
See y'all.
anyone oppose? All right. Good job, everyone.
Bye.
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 Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Wait, hey, Mr.
Yes.
Confetti, I was gonna say 10:02, but I didn't get a chance to put my,
I thought you'd be having a cigar by now. But
well, if I was outside, I would have, but I'm inside, so I'm not. I could have went in the basement though. Everyone have a good night.
So I
All
need to
right.
let the end of this just wind down for YouTube. So I'll be online
Okay.
here for about another 30 seconds and we'll be live on YouTube for about another 30 seconds.
all right.
Feel free to jump off if you want though. You don't have
Okay.
to wait for me.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ken.
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 Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
I
Bye.
like your baseball cap, Stefan.
Well, you don't want to see my hair underneath it. That's all.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, we're all there, pal.
bye guys. Be safe.
I'm gonna have a ponytail in another week.
Oh man, that would be bad. Don't do that.